All right, let's watch this Hazelnutty video then. I haven't seen it yet. I want to see more about talents and stuff. I'm making 20 gold on my thing here.
Hello.
Hi, how's it going?
It's going good. How are you doing today?
Pretty good.
Yeah, all things considered. Awesome. I'm so excited. Thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with me today and
he was
talk
on
a
there
little
all
bit
day,
about Dragonflight.
Going
I
around.
wanted to start by asking a little bit about the shift away from borrowed power in expansions. This is something
You know what
we
I
talked a
think
little bit
Blizzard's
about
doing
in the
right now?
presentation, and I just want.
What's that?
They're doing what they do best. They're copying everyone.
Cool.
Right?
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I don't care. As long as the game's good.
To hear more about
Ian's
what
pulling a Yoshi P,
inspired that shift.
going around everywhere and doing interviews.
Is that what Yoshi P does? Who is Yoshi P? Is that the Final Fantasy guy?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And whether or not, like, what it means
They
in the future
ripped
going
flying
forward.
from
expansions
Guild
after
Wars.
Dragonflight for bringing freshness to classes.
Yeah, so
It's good. It's a
I
good
think
sign. It's
lot
a
of it
healthy
is,
sign of
as
Blizzard
mentioned,
going back
just
to their
in
ways.
response to both player feedback and our own experiences, both playing the game and as developers. I think we recognize that, you know, the double-edged sword of
gonna be hard for
creating
you. I guess
something
you can't listen to the
awesome
video.
and empowering and complex like Artifact.
I can mute
Legion,
Discord and listen
was
to it.
that, well, if we're building this thing that
All right, bye.
we really can't sustain carrying forward, we have to take it away from you. And losing something awesome sucks. And having every expansion begin with, like, we just dug a hole, and now we have to fill it with a new thing, where at best, maybe if we can get you back to feeling like you were before, that's not success, that's not forward movement, that's not exciting. And I think, so one of the questions was, like, how do we get out of it? How do we get into this, and how do we get out of it?
Yeah.
I think
Everyone
that
copied WoW for years?
led us to just kind of reflect on the past dozen or so years and, you know, realize that part of what used to fill that gap every expansion was new talents and getting talent points to spend and carry forward with you.
Yeah.
And
I mean, the systems being carried forward was, I was amazed. I was really surprised when Legion ended and they just scrapped all of the artifact power stuff. I thought they were going to, like, incorporate it into the next part of the game, right? Like these were the cool parts of it. We didn't like these parts. I thought it was really cool. An iterative way. I was like, oh, this is a cool idea. Get rid of the artifact weapons, but take the pieces that you liked of the artifact weapons and employ them into your characters, like baseline. Like, okay, hey, this is a cool core part of the rotation of elemental shamans. It's now taken out. We're putting it baseline into the game of elemental shamans. Therefore, boom, you have this item now that is part of the core class experience. But we didn't have to bring everything with us, right? We didn't have to bring the entire tree with us. Just the things we decided are good enough, right? And I guess there's never a good way to do that because at some point someone's going to be mad because something gets left behind that you wanted. But yeah, it was weird that they just threw everything out and then they slowly put things back in through the BFA stuff.
And the original system, one of the challenges there was, you know, by the time we'd gotten into Cataclysm coming into Mists, we were looking at like 70, 80-point trees with just tremendous depth. We're getting deeper and deeper. And they were kind of collapsing upon themselves in a sense. You know, I think one of the original strengths of the classic talents back in the day was the relative weighting of your spec versus the rest of your class. Like a build might be 30-21 or 31-20, but you still had 2/3 as many points in your off spec as you did in your main spec.
Yeah.
By the time you got to Wrath, and even if we continue that further into Cataclysm, well, now you were putting 51 points, you were 51-20, and you were like, and so continuing to go deeper and deeper was not sustainable there.
Okay.
And so when we took a step back and tried to build a system from scratch that we could imagine capturing the strengths of the original talents, the customization and flexibility players have grown accustomed to in recent years, but also be a foundation to build upon for many expansions going forward, that is what led us to where we landed here with separate class and spec trees, so that as we can expand them both over time without shifting the ratio, recognizing if you let players do it, they're always going to put more points in their spec tree. They're always going to want to be better resto druids, better at dealing damage with their fire mage spells or whatever else.
That makes sense.
And that's, an exciting place for us to invest our efforts and our focus in a way that we know is going to make the game better after Dragonflight. When we're here talking about what our next expansion after that is going to be, and when you're leveling beyond 70, you're not going to be leaving this behind, you're going to be building upon it.
So you envision adding more layers and more rows of talents in the future going forward?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I think
Cool.
we've built this system.
That's what I'd like to see.
I mean, could we sustain that for 20 years? Probably not. But we don't. Realistically, we think of there's a horizon of sorts where we want to make sure this will work for 2 to 3 expansions, and then beyond that, it's sort of a future us problem where so much will have changed between now and then. It's not really responsible for us to plant firm stakes in the ground, and if we're compromising the excitement of our designs because we're not sure how they're going to scale 8 years from now, we're doing a disservice to players today. And 8 years from now won't matter if we're not making an amazing game for players today. Just to quickly touch back on another piece of your first question.
Yeah,
I don't think it means necessarily the complete end of borrowed power, so to speak. I mean, Gear is borrowed power, right? Gear is the original borrowed power. You have a tier set, you get your 4-piece set bonus, and you know what? You're going to leave it behind and move on and replace it with something new.
True.
And there are always going to be, systems like that and more self-contained things. But we don't necessarily, want to slam the door shut entirely there, because I think there is something exciting about patch-specific systems or things that really feel thematically tied to a piece of content. But in terms of the expansion spanning alternate progression that is meant to be what drives your character through an expansion, that is not in the cards for the foreseeable future.
So it's fair to say that there's not going to be a Dragonflight active ability that we're going to be using in this new expansion, that our power is tied to our classes instead?
Correct.
Okay.
Exactly correct.
It was cool to see some of the greatest hits from the past expansions potentially make it into the talent tree, so that was really exciting.
It's something we're looking forward to just hearing feedback from and talking through over the course of alpha and beta, right? Mm-hmm. What are I'm sure eagle-eyed observers saw things like Convoke and the sample druid talents. What are other things that you don't want to leave behind or that you'd love to have back? And all options are on the table.
We've been hearing a bit today, and something I'm very curious about is sort of this new Dragonflight almost version of the Renown system, where you're able to work with different factions in Dragonflight and progress them in a way that's similar to Renown. And I'm curious if you can tell me more about the differences and whether or not there's player power tied there, or if
I don't
it's
even know
more
what
of a
Renown
cosmetic
is.
thing.
What is Renown?
I think
is that reputation?
We're looking at evolving what some of our endgame reputations have been. Reputation hasn't really changed much since literally 2005. There's this old structure of 3,000 points, then 6,000, then 12,000, then 21,000.
Oh, right. Okay.
From, honored to
right. You had a certain level of renown every week. It unlocks slowly. That's right. Okay. Yeah, I did the renown rep for a while, and I was just like, I think what I don't like about retail as well is the weekly gating of content, and the week it's not even that good. Right? I think the weekly gating of content is cool if that weekly content actually is interesting. But for the most part, all the Covenant stuff I did that was weekly locked, it was just kind of boring. And it was all right, cool. It was weekly quests, and it was the story. It was the story of the expansion locked behind things in a week. And the weirdest part of that was when we did things like you would kill Denathrius week 1, and then you would fight for 13, 14 weeks. I don't know how many weeks it was, but it was let's say 9 weeks. It was 9 weeks of doing quests about how we're going to infiltrate Denathrius' castle. But I've already beat him on the first week, right? So it just felt weird. It was just a weird thing. My character's already been through the raid, already down the boss, and now I'm doing a quest line that's leading up to him being released on Mythic, which he'll be truly dead, right?
Exalted, it gets progressively, harder to reach the next tier.
I don't really care about the story enough to
give you
the story is not important to the game. The gameplay. I don't think the gameplay should be dictated by the story, but rather the story should revolve around the gameplay. And you can have a bunch of story stuff going on in the background, but the story itself serves the gameplay, not the gameplay serves the story. I feel like that's what we've gotten, right? He must have started late because he wasn't out that early. Oh, maybe I wasn't. Maybe I was wrong. I feel like we killed him pretty early on, and he still had quests left to do.
Awards.
I know I did Mythic. I know I played when Mythic Dungeons there was no Mythic Plus yet, right? I remember playing that first week and getting through all the Mythic Dungeons and like having a chance to like gear out in Mythic Zero, and I was having a blast. I was like, it's so much fun. And then the Mythic Plus system came out, and I immediately lost interest in the game because I had to like farm out the same dungeon but get better gear to then get my score up so that I can go to the next harder difficulty of the dungeon to get the better gear to then get my score up so that I can get the next hardest difficulty to get my score up so that people would invite me to their groups because I'm pugging. And it felt that to me was annoying. The Mythic Zero dungeons and the whole Mythic getting my gear ready for Mythic Zero dungeons and clearing them for the first time, I enjoyed that a lot. It felt very much similar to TBC and the beginning of every expansion, but getting finally to the Mythic system the Mythic dungeon system, I can't stand that.
You have to look at it. You have to find a vendor or a quartermaster somewhere and like look ahead.
Just toxic behavior.
And I think
propped up by a really bad system.
Renown worked in Shadowlands that solved a number of those problems in terms of more measured, steady progression, laying out on a track what goals were ahead of you. And I think that's something that we want to adapt to some of our endgame structures in Dragonflight. So imagine instead of your Venthyr Renown or your Night Fae Renown, it's this Centaur clan or the Explorers League that you're building renown with and working towards unlocking goals along the way. Not necessarily through the same structured weekly quest where you have to do the same quest every week like you did for your Covenant, but more just open-ended objectives. In terms of the things that would be available through these tracks, I think nothing that we've currently planned is that sort of like auxiliary multiplicative player power that lies outside of our other systems. Of course, there can be cosmetics. Of course, there's gear there, right? The same way, if you're an outdoor world-oriented player who doesn't do Mythic Plus, who isn't doing progressive rating, all those players still want and deserve and need item progression of their own. And I think this is a more streamlined, elegant way to have those goals that you can work towards on your own pace as you choose to help this group or that group when you log in every day.
That's super cool. I'm really excited about that. I have some questions about crafting. You said some really interesting things this morning about crafting and about being able to build identity and like investment in your profession and have that be part of your own character's identity. And I'm really curious as to what kind of investment are crafters going.
I've always found like the world gear that you get through like that they talk about. He's talking about like the single player getting gear slowly, far behind the raider and the mythic dungeon player. I always thought that was like catch-up gear in my mind to help you, catch up to the raiders and get into a dungeon group. But I guess there must be players out there that just play the game like a solo player experience and just chill out and like do a daily quest, and then one day they get a piece of gear upgrade and they're like, oh, that's cool. And they just equip it and they go on.
Going to need to put into their profession to kind of build that sort of notoriety, because if everybody can do it, then you're not very notorious. Are we talking gold investment like it was with legendaries? Are we talking pure time? Is there like a luck component?
Time is a big piece of it. It's what you choose to dedicate your character's focus towards. We're definitely not, gold is a part of it, and certainly playing, being a part of the economy is part of every crafter and has been forever, even if you're just a blacksmith who isn't a miner and is getting raw materials to craft them into things and resell for a profit. But I don't think we're looking at gold as the sort of backbone of startup costs, the way we did with legendaries, for example, where a crafter might feel like they need to invest upfront without any instant recouping it, 1 million gold and skilling up, a particular pattern in order to be able to make a thing that they would then recoup over time. Here, really, it's more about choice. It's more about specialization. And I think that's how we're hoping to achieve differentiation. Because I think part of identity is being able to do things as a blacksmith that not every blacksmith can do. If all blacksmiths are identical, then it's like, well, just find a generic blacksmith, hand them your stuff, they'll click combine. Specializations are an interesting path there, something that we didn't really get into much today, but we'll be talking about a lot in the weeks to come, is that each of these professions actually also has a talent tree, a specialization to it, so that rather than just picking, let's say, armor smithing or weaponsmithing, you can invest in armor smithing and then further in making plate armor and further in making helms, and have bonuses to your ability to make higher level ones at a higher level of quality. that are, at least initially, exclusive with making the choice to invest in making mail gloves or in making two-handed swords.
One of the things I worry about with that is when I think about making gold, right? It's kind of like jewel crafting and finding the jewel crafter on the server with the gem enchant you need, right? Like, hey, I need this cut. Remember the beginning of Burning Crusade came out? And you're like, I need strength gems cut. And there's only like 2 guys on the server that had the strength gem cut. And they just got lucky for it. I guess as a player, when I think immediately when I hear someone saying you have to make a choice to be a blacksmith of this type of helm, you can make helms or whatever you know, or you're armor smith or you're a weaponsmith. Which one's going to make me the most money and which one's going to give me the most player power is immediately my questions. And then how do I decide which one to go then, right? If money's my most important one, gold, I guess, I don't know if gold's important though because they just pay for gold in retail. Why would I care about how much gold something will make me? I guess I want player power is all I'm going to consider about then. You know, player power is going to get a higher percentage of my brain of pros and cons of player power versus, yeah.
Long term, players and completionists who we know there's a decent Venn diagram overlap between hardcore crafters and completionists will be able to.
You can play for free if you make enough gold. Yeah,
but that's a long term completionist goal. I think thinking back,
I always felt like if I made enough gold to play for free, I'm probably spending too much time in the game and not enough time making real life money to pay to play. Like I always felt like I probably could make more money in the real world to afford to play the game instead of playing the game so that I can afford to play. Or like that's how I always saw people who pay for it with gold. Like if I have to play the game enough to get enough, unless I found some secret that nobody else knows about that's getting me gold for basically not doing anything, I'm gonna have to play the game longer to afford to play the game when I could just work another longer hour or put out more work to make more money. But I could also I just enjoy the game and that's enjoyable and you can make some gold.
A really successful example of this was actually kind of thematic with our Wrath announcement today, jewel crafting in Wrath. Where early on you would do jewel crafting and get currency that you could use to
and it only needs 4 players, so the game is going to die.
And you could choose to get the haste crit cut, and someone else might get the, whatever, right?
The reason people like Fresh so much is because they like the even playing field. They like the idea of not everybody's starting at the same level, and nobody's ahead of me yet. Is it too late to start playing for Cataclysm right now, right? Like if someone asked me today in chat, hey, am I too late to play Cataclysm? Yeah, you're too late, right? Like, I want to get ready for Cataclysm coming out after Wrath. I want to wait for Classic Cata. Is it too late to start playing right now? Yeah, if you wanted every possible advantage, yeah. You could have billions of gold right now if you just, whatever. If your goal was to get ready for Cata and you wanted to be the best you ever could, then yeah, you missed the boat. You're never going to be able to be as good as the guy who started day one getting ready for Cataclysm. For whatever reason,
a different one, or you're doing int and they're doing strength.
This is why people like Fresh, because it doesn't matter. There was no prep that mattered.
In the market, what gems were in high demand. Others could just be in your raiding guild. Well, you know that someone has these 2 covered. You're going to get the one that the warriors in your guild need for their gear, and you're complementing each other.
The problem with that
long term, everyone ends up with a lot of stuff, but as we know with crafting, especially, like it's really the first few weeks of a tier, the first couple of months of a tier, where there's the most focus on getting that advantage and on specialization. And so that's a piece of how we hope this will play out.
Okay, yeah, that's cool. Exactly what I just said. That's cool.
Be the person that if someone, through our BOP cooperative crafting / work order system, if someone gets a frame or a base for a great helm from running a dungeon or from a rare mob in the world somewhere, they're going to seek out the person on their server who makes the best helms. And I think it's possible to be that person and be known as that person.
That's cool.
With sufficient specialization.
The be known as that person is the cool part there. The fact that you could be known as the guy, that's the guy on the server who has the helmets. I go to that guy for my helmets. He's a good helmet guy, that guy. He's made me the best helmets for cheap. I gave him the mats. He gave me the helmet. No questions asked. That guy's a good guy. I like him.
And that can become part of your identity for those who want it. And others are just going to be happy to engage in trade skills at a more shallow level, as they always have, and that's fine. We don't want to add complexity or force people to do stuff if that's not what interests them. But for those who really want to go deep in the system, you want that depth to be there for them.
I like that a lot.
Force you not to do stuff you don't.
This might be like a super early question on that note, but do you have an idea of where you see crafted gear item level fitting in the like ladder of itemization to keep these things relevant?
I think it needs to be up there with the very best, and I think that means like mythic raid level. Now, the natural questions are, what do you have to do to get that gear? Are there BOP components involved? Do some of those things come from raiding or from doing dungeons at a certain level? I think we certainly do not want and will not create a world where you can just walk to the auction house and spend millions of gold and buy a full set of crafted mythic raid gear. But
crafted mythic raid
what
gear
has hamstrung the professions for quite a while has been the sense that, like, well, okay, if you're a casual player, maybe for the first couple of weeks they're relevant, but after that you're not really thinking to use crafted gear. And so that's the space that we're looking to navigate, where dedicated crafters can truly make the best.
I thought it was cool and classic to have the idea, I think it was private servers really did this, but not, it was like the Nightfall axe or like the armor piercing axe that you could give armor reduction to your whole raid if you had one guy craft and wear it. Like you gave it to your enhancement shaman or the guy that wasn't a very good DPSer. It didn't happen in classic because private servers got the numbers wrong on the proc chances of those items, but it's still cool to see. Those were cool, right? When did resistance gear stop being a thing? I think it was in probably Wrath of the Lich King. I don't remember there being a resistance fight. Maybe you could say Saffron and Nax was a resistance fight. But I feel like the last resistance fight was the one in Black Temple, right? Mother Shazra or whatever. She had shadow resist, and people used to wear shadow resist for that. I don't even know if they do now. I assume people don't, but I remember people getting shadow resist gear for the Shazra fight.
Stuff. But again, the ability to have that, like,
there was a team who were doing it without resist, which everyone got immediately.
You can get a BOP component without being the crafter yourself and take it to someone to have them make the thing for you, can mean that there's still player investment and player achievement in doing the content involved in getting the gear.
What would you say the team has kind of learned from Shadowlands legendaries?
And do we have any? That's true. You're right. We didn't have any resistance gear for Viscudius or whatever. I think there was only one. We had some resistance gear we tried for the princess fight in AQ40, right? The Princess B. Yeah. You can farm mythic bosses 20 BOEs 24 hours a day off trash, so you can buy a couple mythic raid pieces for millions. Yeah.
Indication of
what he was talking about. There's no crafted gear, but yeah, you can just go farm mythic trash as a raid group and then make millions, right?
Whether or not legendaries might be attempted again in Dragonflight.
So I think we can say that, the Legion / Shadowland style legendaries, where there's dozens of them and everyone has them. We have no plans to do that again in Dragonflight.
Private servers created that meta, yeah.
Our focus is elsewhere. We are carrying tier sets forward, for example. I think what we've learned there is customization is interesting. Having the ability, having a small collection of legendaries that you can swap among to empower your abilities in certain ways for dungeons versus raids. Those are interesting layers. And again, in a sense, I see that as kind of filling a gap that we have created ourselves by not having an extensible talent system, right? The Dragonflight version of that is, well, this is a talent point that you can choose to divert your build towards, and that can empower your AoEs, or that can give you this extra proc, or that can make this thing refund energy, or whatever suits your purposes. We'd rather just have that in our evergreen systems.
Cool.
Now, all that's to be clear, all that's not to say we'll never see legendaries again.
Yeah,
I think there's room for like the Sylvanas bow, the one-off items that feel thematic and appropriate for a piece of content.
I like that. I mean, I love that. I love legendaries being unique and special, not being like,
and this really
gotta get my 3 legendaries on my character.
How special it is.
Mm-hmm. That makes total sense. I have a couple of questions about Drakthir and Invokers as they kind of go together. I heard that Drakthir are going to be able to actually fly.
It's fascinating how good Asm's interview was, the pacing, segues, interactions, questions, etc. Yeah, he did a really good job. Isn't that how the gold BOE black market got exposed? Race to world first, or exploiting system paying to win, basically. Yeah. Meme Gene. Like, I think I forget. I saw the numbers at the end of the last race to world first, but there was some thousands of dollars, tens of thousands at least, maybe hundreds of thousands. I don't remember, worth of gold that was spent to get the world first kill. Right. Like, the amount of gold they spend to do split raids, they will transfer characters to different servers, then transfer another character back from that server on the new server with the BOE. You know, transfer characters with gold to a server, then pay for another character transfer to get that BOE back to the server they need it on, and then like just the amount of gold being spent and the amount of money being spent to get these BOEs to different places and to do split raids and say, hey, come join us for the split raid. We'll pay you gold to not take gear from us, and then everything personal loot for the heroic splits. The amount of gold being spent, the amount of real life money being spent just to fund the world first race is insane. I'm not against that though. That's okay. I just wonder if, as long as Blizzard isn't like, that's our revenue stream, the world first race, like everything we do is built for that, right? And the game itself should be fun, not just the world first race. It's fun to watch the world first race, don't get me wrong, but I don't want the game to be designed around it.
With the dragon riding system, but without necessarily using the Drake. I was curious if you know if they'll also be able to use the Drake if they want to, customize their dragon. It's an option for them.
Dragon on a dragon.
So I think the plan there is that sort of
dragons riding dragons.
Racial,
don't go to that part of the internet, guys.
Form of gliding, being able to have momentum is something that Dracthyr will just be able to do.
Mm-hmm.
The upgraded versions the players will earn through dragon riding are not something they'll be able to access in their Dracthyr form. They just have that baseline version that's theirs. So in order to take advantage of those, you will indeed want to be riding on your dragon companion. You'll be doing so in Visage form, since dragon riding dragon maybe gets a little weird. But yeah, we want to make sure that everyone has those options open to them, and certainly that you can engage in.
I do not like the human form either. It looks gross.
Piece of it.
Okay, cool. Can the Dracthyr fly outside of the Dragon Isles without a mount?
They can, yeah. I mean, yes. Though again, it's like an enhanced form of gliding, effectively. Again, this is the baseline, unupgraded version of, you can maybe get a little bit of lift, but it's like Demon Hunter plus with cool momentum and physics.
But you'll still want to have your flying mount if you're going across the continent. Okay, cool. Speaking of dragon riding, does dragon riding and this sort of, I don't want to say artifact mount, but like this sort of one way of getting around mean like a reduced focus on mounts or mount collecting in this expansion?
No. We're still going to make a ton of awesome mounts, and again,
why can't the dragons look like the other dragons as well? Like Alexstrasza right there in the background?
Calling your Drake to traverse the environment, but it's not going to fully replace your regular mount while you're there.
I think they're trying to do that.
You'll certainly use it with with restrictions that you can overcome and reduce as you improve your skill in dragon riding. Whether
so
it's
Neltharion was a scaly
high up that you couldn't otherwise, or to quickly
I guess he was a dragon, so that's not that weird.
Finished a quest. But running around areas, you're still going to use your broad collection of mounts, and we want to make sure that that's not something we're letting up on at all. If anything, tons of new creatures, a huge new bestiary to encounter, and we can rest assured that basically anything with, 4 legs, 2 legs, any number of legs, odds are good we're going to make it into a mount at some point, because we know that's what you want.
Alexstrasza has 2 legs.
Not wrong. A lot of the video that was shown of dragon riding looked really impactful, and the motion was really cool. But I'm
Blizzard
also curious as
to
what's being looked at in terms of accessibility for
if it's in a cubicle, if it's on the floor.
It was very swoopy, and some people might have some issues with that.
Yeah, that's. I think one of the very first concerns that were really brought up was like, what's this going to feel like? Are there concerns if you are prone to motion sickness? We have a few happy guinea pigs internally who self-identify as very motion sick in games. They've been testing it out and giving feedback. They've been pleasantly surprised themselves by how it felt, but we also are building in different camera controls, the option to turn off certain motion effects. We want to make sure that this can be as immersive as you want, but for those who have challenges or have that actually harm their experience, you want you to be able to dial it back and still just have the physical navigation of it without all the effects.
Good. I really appreciate that. On the topic, and this one can be short, but on the topic of taking direction and inspiration of the community, which I've been super impressed by in the past couple of patches, there's a concept that's been really popular and a rumor that was going around in the past couple of months about player housing in WoW. And I'm kind of curious as to what sort of considerations takes features like that onto or off of the table when you're looking at what to build an expansion with.
Yeah, I mean, player housing is a topic that comes up a ton around the team, right? It's tons of support for it across the community. And
I think it's the justification for the question is the difference between Asmongold's interview and this one. And then Asmongold just asked the question. I don't know how much justification, like, hey, I'm sorry I have to ask you this, but here's this question. It was like, hey, here's a question I got for you. This is what I'm thinking.
Sure. But on the topic of taking direction and inspiration of the community, which I've been super impressed by in the past couple of patches, there's a concept that's been really popular and a rumor that was going around in the past couple of months about player housing in WoW. And I'm kind of curious as to what sort of considerations takes features like that onto or off of the table when you're looking at what to build an expansion with.
Yeah, I mean, player housing is a topic that comes up a ton around the team, right? It's tons of support for it across the community and including within the team. It's something that many of us would love ourselves. Putting together the package of features for an expansion, it's a mix of, what thematically suits the expansion, what's going to appeal to different types of players, but also what would be required to deliver that feature at the level that players expect and deserve, and what would we have to give up to make that happen. And player housing is a big one. It's it's one of those things that to do right it's a big project. It's a big undertaking, and I think I would argue that if we were to do it, it would probably have to span multiple expansions. Like it's a large enough feature in terms of just the art. Because I think we saw from doing the garrisons back in Warlords. Frankly, due to resource constraints, we were limited in kind of offering, this is the Alliance garrison, this is the Horde garrison.
Yeah.
People were like, well, I'm a Blood Elf. I want cool Silvermoon architecture in my garrison. Why can't I build that? And the answer was like, I mean, that was the original "it would cost you a raid tier" joke, but actually it was kind of true. It's like, well, this is how many thousands of hours it would take to make that. That's what player housing has to be if and when we make it happen.
Yeah.
So it's something that,
it would cost a raid tier. That's what he's saying, team. Do you want a raid tier or do you want player housing? What do you want, guys? Am I the only person in the world that doesn't really care about player housing? I don't care about player housing insofar. I think it would be cool, though. I think there's a lot of players that I think that stuff is the stuff that a casual player would like, right? Like, I'm thinking about the people that are the solo player, the person that's like playing the game and getting like a random gear upgrade 12 weeks down the line they could have gotten a mythic dungeon done and gotten a better version of weeks ago, but they don't care. That's the kind of stuff that I imagine a casual player would like, right? That's why I don't know. There's part of this me is I want them to cater to the casual as much as possible and then have the elite raid tier set up so that if you really want to get a group of friends together and try to do a raid, you can. But you don't have to do the normal raid. You don't have to do the heroic raid. There is just one raid tier, right? There's something about it. Like, I don't. It's okay to not have 4 different item level or difficulties of raids, and then have player housing as an idea of like, okay, and then you collect a new chair for your house that you can go decorate. You can do Animal Crossing for your house. I know it sounds ridiculous and stupid, and I don't actually want to go hunt a chair down. I just think there's got to be players out there, like Animal Crossing is so big, steal from Animal Crossing, put it in your game, let people come visit your house. People love that crap. Go play Minecraft if you want to build a house. I think that World of Warcraft has forever stolen from other games, and they should continue to steal from other games to make a great game. Like the ability to share your house with people. Go to Sunwell and kill Jade, and he drops some curtains for you that you can put in your house. You just go back and farm, Lich King, and you get some Ice Crown, Citadel architecture. Obviously that's a little ridiculous going back and making gear for every single raid that ever existed, and then like making items for those so that there's a reason to go back and do them. Ice Crown, ice cream.
But they're not something we're going to be able to do for Dragonflight.
I totally understand.
The Maru chandelier.
Other things that some people have been asking about, with the Reliquary and the Explorers League coming back into focus for Dragonflight, can players look forward to any new archaeology content, perhaps?
So our profession's focus in Dragonflight is, at this point, on the primary crafting and gathering.
People love Pokemon too. I agree, though. I hate the Pokemon game in WoW. I hate the battle pets. There's got to be people who love that, though. I just think the battle pets are... I think what annoys me about it is how convoluted it is. You can have 3 of the same pet, and then there's like, you have to level each of them up, and then there's like, I just could not... It's just such a huge system for such a boring and like such a boring... Like I can't do it on my... Can you do it on your phone? Can you battle on your phone? Like if I can do battle pets at my phone and they get me gold or something as I play it, then I would play it more. But I don't get anything for doing it, and I don't enjoy... Like I want to do multiple things. I want to level my pets and get rep or something, right? Or give me 2 things to work on at the same time because I'm doing something. Like
archaeology. It's
maybe that's the Monday announcement. The battle pets,
it needs a fresh
battle
coat of
pets on
paint,
your phone. Yeah, the mobile
happy
game.
With really how that played out or where that profession has ended up. It's not something that's going to be part of our initial efforts in Dragonflight. I think thematically, the idea of learning about the relics, learning about the past, and collecting things will be something that happens across the Dragon Isles, but we're not planning to return to the like excavation minigame form of it. We want to figure out something better to do.
Yeah, I thought archaeology was
future,
a poor profession. They implemented it poorly, and they kept trying to string it along as it was
anything
good, but it wasn't all
on the
that
horizon
fun.
In terms of pet battle content? After the dungeons were kind of wrapped up, some people have been very eager. I wouldn't know any of them, but very eager to see what's coming next.
I mean, so and nothing huge for
Pet
Dragonflight
battles
itself.
is what we just
though,
talked about.
As always, we're going to have a whole new array of stuff to tame and capture and incorporate in your collections and outdoor challenges. Something I'd love for us to take a crack at improving PvP pet battles. I think there's room for an alternate mode there. Something like, something that's a bit more asynchronous, where like you set up a defensive team, and like a lot of mobile games do stuff like this effectively, where like you set up your defensive team and then you can instantly challenge other people's. Because right now, part of the challenge.
Pets go hand in hand with player housing. Just saying, yeah, no, I like collecting pets. I liked collecting pets. I loved getting a little raptor guy that would follow me around and do stuff, but I didn't need him to like the attack, like the fighting mini game is so dumb. Like it doesn't like the pets. It's terrible. Like I'd rather just play Pokemon on my Game Boy. They didn't do a good job of stealing that content. They didn't steal that content and make it really polished and good. They just stole the content and then they said, "Hey, here's a prairie dog from Thunderbluff. Do you want to attack a rat from Dalaran?" And you're like, "No, I don't. What?" Like there's nothing special about that.
Trying to queue up and go through the motions and find enough people, even if we incentivize it, like with the weekly quest or whatever, it's still pretty tough. And if you try it for the first time, you are jumping into the very deep end of a very shark-filled pool. Whereas I think there could be something much more accessible and fun there. I'd love to see us do it, but other things are taking priority for Dragonflight launch.
That's totally fair. Sounds interesting, though. I had a quick one that I actually missed on the topic of the Drakthir class. I read on the website, I was looking through the splash screen there, and it said that they were mid-range, and I'm curious as to what that means in context of ranged DPS. Like, are they executing their rotation from 40 or 30 or 20 yards, or?
Exact number TBD. You're probably going to want to be more like 25 to 30. If you think of hunters as like long range, we have a couple of specs that occasionally have even range boosting stuff beyond 40. And some of that is, I think, for directional nukes, those are probably gonna have the standard range. But like things like breath attacks or cones that are part of the evoker's repertoire, you'll probably want to be a bit closer to your enemies. And some of that is just it's a bit of the feel of playing an evoker as distinct from other range classes. But again, we want to make sure it doesn't feel like an undue restriction where, your raid has to constrain their positioning to accommodate the evokers in your ranged clump or whatever. That's the kind of thing that's kind of an aspirational thought initially, but we're gonna dial that in over the course of playtesting and feedback.
Yeah.
That makes sense. That was one of the questions that I had when we were talking about breath attacks, is that could be a very long range breath. And then just to wrap this up, do you have any personal point of excitement with Dragonflight that you would like to talk about yourself that you haven't had a chance to yet?
Let's see. We've touched on most of them. I think I'm personally just so excited about the talent system, and just like I want us, even before alpha, I hope to see us release some of our talent trees just for community dissection and feedback, and let fan sites
I would love to see that.
And start playing.
I can't wait. I really. That's the thing I'm most excited. That's the thing I want to see. Is like, can I see the talent tree? Can you show me the talent trees? Like, let me see. Let me see what's in the talent. I want to see. Can I see?
You know, get that.
Nope, not anything exciting. I don't even want to be here.
Start getting feedback to the team on how we can make them even better. One thing I haven't had a chance to talk about that I think is hopefully pretty cool. We have some fun plans for Mythic Plus in Dragonflight that we didn't get a chance to talk about in the announce today. In some ways, what we're doing for Shadowlands Season 4 is a little preview of those. And I think we've heard and seen that Mythic Plus is just about my favorite feature out there, but running no matter what we do with affixes, running the same dungeon for like 18 months straight, it wears a little thin by the end and before the end. And people aren't necessarily that keen on like refarming the same item, 26 eye levels higher each tier. Mm-hmm. And we also have this wealth of awesome old content that is still super fun, as we see with things like Legion Time Walking. And so we'd like to do for Dragonflight is launch with 8 new dungeons, but have Season 1 of Dragonflight Mythic Plus be comprised of actually 4 of those new Dragonflight dungeons, plus a mix of 4 dungeons
Mythic Plus.
Older expansions that never had Mythic Plus before, but we can, whether it was an old Mist Challenge mode, Warlords dungeon, etc., probably not Shadowlands stuff because that's too recent, have that flesh out the Season 1 pool, then have Season 2 be the 4 other Dragonflight dungeons, plus 4 other old ones, and actually basically have complete turnover from season to season in terms of what the pool looks like, and really freshen up the experience.
I wonder what the gear looks like with that, right? Like imagine your best in slot trinket doesn't drop from one of the Mythic Plus ones, right? Then you have to find one that. So then I wonder, and so then the season changes. Like say there's a really good trinket for Arms Warriors that does drop in the Mythic Plus version of the dungeons, and then there's a trinket off a Mythic 0 dungeon that you can do that's really good for you. It's itemized perfectly, but it doesn't scale as well for every other one. So then you have all these other specs that are picking up the trinket that is not itemized perfectly for them, but is better because it's just a higher item level, versus the guy who just got lucky and his spec is exactly perfect for that item that drops because there's only 4 dungeons. Because I remember farming Mythic Pluses, and you're farming them for one specific item, and you're just hoping that it drops, right? Like you run a Mythic dungeon, you clear the Mythic Plus, and then it drops an item, and one person in your group gets an item, and then if you clear it in time, you get a 2, right? If that's true, I think. And then you get your trinket, so you get your 2 items, and it's like one of the random items from a boss in that dungeon. It's just like, I don't know, man. It's looking at it like, oh man, that would suck to be like, oh, I'm an enhancement shaman. There's a really good trinket that drops there, but it won't drop until the second half of the expansion when they switch the Mythic Plus dungeons. And then what about the person who's like, oh, I really want that trinket after they take away the Mythic Plus dungeons? So here's the first 4 Mythic dungeons, and then, okay, Season 2, those first 4 their items are no longer on the table, able to get. So there's an Arms Warrior who got the first trinket from the first dungeons, and then in Season 2, he got his second trinket, and now his gear is set up perfectly, and the guy who started in Season 2 doesn't get that. I guess there's itemization problems there, but it's also like, as long as you can do good enough without needing to bro out that much. But part of the love of WoW and the things I love to do is that like ridiculous level of like, let me farm for this. Let me farm for this until I get that crazy thing, right?
Accessibility of that ecosystem, if you're someone who's trying to come along,
yeah, worse than they add the legendary abilities to farm for. That's true. That's right. Doom Winds. I was trying to get Doom Winds for the first week and I couldn't get it, and I was sitting there waiting for Doom Winds on my enhancement shaman, and then I got it on like the 3rd week or something. I can't remember what week I got it on, and then I was finally like, oh cool, I got the Doom Winds, and I can give up the I think I was on the Dire Wolf for the Spirit Wolves elemental thing, Witch Doctor, Spirit Wolves legendary, but Doom Winds was better. You won't be able to farm a higher item level that previous season trinket, so you'd want something new anyway, most likely. That's true, yeah.
Whatever else. The burden of community knowledge can very quickly become dauntingly high. Everyone figured out the boss mechanics and how everything works in the first couple of months, and the rest of the community is on like super optimization of skips and which pulls you can combine. And if you're just coming along
you missed that wing?
trying
Oh yeah,
to,
dude, Torghast. Don't get me started on Torghast.
That's pretty rough. Whereas I think if it's...
I mean, like, you talk about, like, I think Torghast was better than, like, than Island Expeditions, but Torghast had a similar problem in that they took out the fun part of what's fun about it to make it grindable, and then also make it so that there was no reason to grind it too much, right? I mean, part of the fun of Vampire Survivors is getting the best crazy thing and just watching your character obliterate stuff for the next 10 minutes. And then Torghast was just like, oh, you only have 11 floors. Maybe a timed Torghast would have been better, and just let your character like infinite levels of Torghast, but you only have 30 minutes.
It's a whole new set of dungeons. It's both, a new set of items and
ability
a new
couldn't
set
build
of
this pretty
puzzles the
legendary
community
early.
hasn't fully solved that you can join them in figuring out together.
That's fantastic. I know a lot of people that are running up into that burden of community knowledge like you talk about, and lots of people that are starting fresh and are getting kind of overwhelmed with the front of the game, and it sounds like Dragonflight's going to be a much easier expansion to kind of come into when you're ready, which is really exciting. This was fantastic. This was awesome. I've had such a great day watching all of the news, and I'm so proud of your team and everything you guys have done, and I'm just so excited to play it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. It's been a pleasure chatting.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
That was cool. And man. Man, this freaking Dragonflight, dude. I'm just more. I guess I want to see Wrath of Lich King classic content, right? I want to see more. I want to learn more about it. So it's interesting to see it all. It makes me like just question, like, what is this? What are we gonna see? What's gonna happen? What is this?
How are you feeling about everything that you saw today?
Fucking breaks, man. Asmon, are you not an arsehole now? Is that confirmed?
No, I can't believe they gave. I can't believe they gave me the interview. I really can't, because contrary to popular opinion, I am still an asshole.
Oh, okay,
yes,
but you've upgraded some way.
I would go as far as to say he's worse than ever.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Clearly, something's changed. When did you get the message? I'm curious. Tell me.
Did I have the interview?
Yeah,
literally 2 days ago.
Okay, so here's what happened. It was the easiest thing ever. It was actually Linksy set it all up for us. Literally in 2 days, Linksy got the entire interview set up. So big shout out to her. And they were very transparent. They were just like, Ian's really busy right now with everything going on. This is how much time we can do. And they set it all up. So I think that this might be something that we can hope to do in the future as well.
Yep. That's cool. All right. That's cool, dude. I'm excited. I'm excited to see where we go with Dragonflight, but I'm not all that excited. I'm more excited about Wrath.